recorded live right here in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's time again for Larry's Rants, Raves, and Reviews. And now, here's Larry.
Hey, folks. Welcome to this episode. We have a very special guest with us, Christian Olsen. Now, Christian, we just have met you, but Brian Norris, who's running for Secretary of State, speaks very highly of you and introduced us. So welcome to the show. Folks, Christian is he is a candidate for the Arkansas Land Commissioner. And I would have to admit that probably a lot of us voters don't even know what a land commissioner does, okay?
That's right. He commissions land.
Well, I did ask a little AI assistance on this one and all. It doesn't sound like it's an office that maybe you're chasing down a whole lot of bad guys or doing a whole lot of stuff, but apparently you want the job, so we're wanting to talk to you about it.
Yeah, sounds great.
And so we're going to let you tell us something about that. But to kind of get the thing kicked off, give us just a very quick history of who you are and you know what you've been doing in life, and then we'll kind of roll from there, okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
So I've been a political junkie for most of my life.
Okay.
I grew up in Little Rock. I was homeschooled, and I just had a love of history. And that love of history turned into a love of politics. And so when I was about 14 years old, I told my dad I had an interest in politics and government. And so he waited until the next conservative Republican knocked on our door campaigning, and he volunteered me. And so I started working in politics pretty early and just fell in love with the door knocking and the phone banking and just meeting new people and talking about ideas and everything. And so I eventually, went to UCA and got a degree in political science, and then actually started working in the Land Commissioner's office. A friend of mine was working for John Thurston at the time and was looking for somebody to come help with some policy and hired me to work there. And I worked there until Asa's 2014 campaign for governor.
Okay.
Worked on his campaign and then in his office for about a year before going to the Agriculture Department. And then I was Deputy Securities Commissioner for a couple of years too. But in the meantime, my wife grew up here in Little Rock. Her family's from South Arkansas, and her name's Melissa. I've got two boys, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. Seth is with us today.
Yeah, Seth is here.
He's the 10-year-old, and then the 7-year-old is Matthew, and he's at home with Mama. And last I know, they were playing Nintendo because we've had them on the road quite a bit lately. So it's a good down day.
I would have to say that campaigning is quite the chore.
You know what? You have to enjoy it if you're going to do it right.
Oh, I would say so. Yeah.
But it is fun.
It's probably harder than the job itself, but
there's a time crunch for sure that we operate under.
Well, when we were trying to get this together, we had to go through the calendar, yours and mine and Randy's, and try to get all together. So
time is limited. Early voting starts 1 week from Tuesday.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And so you are in this primary.
That's right.
You're running on a Republican ticket.
That's right.
And you're in a primary. And we have had several guests on lately that has talked about how important the primaries really are, and have given that a lot of attention. So we do hope that everybody's going to get out, do some early voting if you have that opportunity, but be sure and get out. On one of the previous podcasts, we talked with, I believe it was Randy Sams, that we talked about how the Republicans gave up a ticket or a Senate seat in Texas because of people that did not get out and vote. About 60,000 people that normally vote did not get out and vote, and it cost them a Senate seat down there.
That's right.
So everybody's vote really is important. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't you tell us what a land commissioner actually does?
So that's one of my favorite questions.
Okay.
And I do like to say that not knowing what the land commissioner's office does is a lot like not knowing who your local prosecutor is.
Okay.
It means that you've been staying out of trouble, right? So unless you are an attorney or a judge, if you really know who your prosecutor is, that might not be a great sign for you, right? And the reason for that is that 90% of what the office does is sell tax-delinquent property.
Oh,
So if you don't pay your real estate taxes to the county collector tries to collect those, and they'll send you nasty mail for about 2 years.
okay.
At the end of those 2 years, they give up and they certify it to the land commissioner. And the land commissioner then tries to collect those taxes for an additional 2 years, roughly. And at the end of that time, if the taxes are still not paid, they put the property up for public auction.
Okay.
And so, when we talk about taxes, I don't like taxes any more than anybody else does. But
Never met one I liked.
I have not met one I've liked. But one thing I will say for real estate taxes, some people will say they're the most unfair taxes, especially once you've paid off your property, right?
Yes, yes.
I figured you'd agree with that. But one of the things that we do need to keep in mind is, I pay my federal taxes, my federal income taxes, because I am a Christian and want to do what I'm supposed to do, and I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah.
So I do what I'm supposed to do. But I don't really trust how the federal government's going to spend my dollars. And when you look at Doge, I think that bears that out pretty accurately.
Yes.
On the state level, because the state has to have a balanced budget, there's some systems in there. The state does a much better job at spending our state income taxes. But really, when you think about it, as a small government, limited government conservative, I think that the government that's most local is the best government. And so even though I don't like our form of real estate taxes, I don't like paying property taxes, it's the county that those support. And most Arkansas counties are very rural. Most of them have very tight budgets. And so when we collect those delinquent taxes, 80% of the taxes collected go straight into the public school fund. And the rest goes to public safety, like the county jail and the sheriff's office, and roads. And in my travels, I haven't found anybody that says, you know what, we have all the money we need to take care of all the roads and all the county needs. Instead, you hear, very serious conversations about very tough decisions that most of our 75 counties have to make. So I see this role primarily as a support organization for the 75 counties. And one of the things I've learned on this campaign that, as somebody who grew up in Little Rock, kind of surprised me is, did you know in Searcy County, you can't buy a pair of shoes? You have to go north to Boone County or south to Van Buren County, because that's where the closest Walmarts are.
Really?
Either in Harrison or Clinton.
Okay.
And you think, well, that's awful. That's terrible. They can't buy a pair of shoes, right? So they don't have a sales tax that can support the needs of the county. They rely on that real estate tax. I do want to point out, though, that they also pointed out that was their choice. They didn't want the Walmart, and so it's not my position to judge, and their choice is, but we do have to understand the reality that most of the state operates in. So
That's interesting.
I've learned a lot on this campaign. Like, I've always been a small government and local government person,
Mm-hmm.
but as I've traveled across the state, you realize that the needs of one county are not the same as the needs in counties next door or across the state. Benton County and Little River County are very different.
Well, I think even doing this podcast for the time that we have, Randy and I have really come to the conclusion that we all focus so much on the national
That's right.
levels, but we don't focus enough on the local and state levels.
That's right.
We really don't.
That's right.
How many times have we gone into the polling booth and pulled a lever for someone that we had no earthly idea?
That's right. Mm. And I think there is a general sense that if there's a problem, we want to solve it across the board, and then we want to solve it on the federal level. And I think that really is a backwards way of doing it. If you look at how our system is designed and the way that federalism is supposed to work, almost all problems need to be solved at home first,
Mm-hmm.
right? If the county can't take care of it, then yes, the state should take care of it. But the state should be responsible for the vast majority of anything that affects your life. Like, a lot of people are riled up about national politics. And to me, that's a symptom that we've gotten off course a little bit, right? The federal government simply shouldn't hold as much power as they do. And if they were back to where the founders had them, we wouldn't be fighting so intensely these cultural battles and these important battles on the national level, because you have so much more say on the state level. You have so much more say on the local level. That's another reason why I don't like real estate taxes. We own some rental properties. I write more than one check for paying my real estate taxes. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, local government is more accountable. They're more responsive. Anytime you hit a pothole, you generally know exactly who's responsible for getting out.
Yeah, right. Speaking of potholes, just drive around Little Rock for a while.
Oh, that ice.
The last time I counted, it was 9 checks I wrote out for different properties.
Yeah.
So
Well, I actually have a funny story on that one, or at least it's funny to me because, on this campaign, we've been on the road a lot. And, in a Republican primary, Northwest Arkansas is very important. So we go up there as much as we can. And they had a dinner. And it happened to be on October 15th, which is the deadline for paying your real estate taxes, right? Mm-hmm. And so I brought my bills. They were in my jacket pocket. I'm like, okay, I've been on the road, but when we get there, I found a quiet corner and I went online and I paid my taxes. I thought, boy, the last thing I can do is running for land commissioner is not pay my real estate taxes. Right. That would be a very bad look, right? And so like, okay, that's done. I can go enjoy the dinner. I can politic. I can campaign. I can talk to folks. Well, we were getting in the car later, and I was moving stuff and putting stuff back in the car, putting my literature and everything. And I realized I had missed one. And I was like, boy, am I glad I found that one. Because if I had paid most of my tax bills and missed one, oh my goodness. Like, it was just simple oversight of it not being in my jacket pocket with the rest of them. It had fallen out. I was like, that's where I said a quick prayer of thanks to God for looking out for me.
Yeah.
Because that would have been...
Right.
That would have been embarrassing, to say the least.
Somebody would have uncovered that and brought it up.
That's right.
Hey, I did notice how conservative you really are on your web page.
Oh, thank you.
And I appreciate that. Randy and I both are ultra conservative, and so I see how conservative you really are and your beliefs and everything.
Thank you. That means a lot.
So I can appreciate that. I did also go over and I was Googling around and doing a little AI, and I only see that the state of Arkansas has had 3 Republican land commissioners, and the rest of them have been Democrat. Is there a reason for that?
Well, Arkansas has been a Democrat state since the Civil War. Well, since before the Civil War. In fact, when Arkansas was a territory before becoming a state in 1836, we were already a Democratic territory. We were supporting Jackson, and then we stayed Democrat during Reconstruction with federal troops. We were Republican. In fact, according to I think it's the Encyclopedia of Arkansas, Cantrell was once known as Republican Row because the carpetbaggers had built mansions up and down Cantrell. And as soon as the federal troops moved out, we reverted very quickly back to being Democrat. And that didn't really change except for some sporadic parts of history, right? Where we had a Republican governor, Rockefeller, and then a Republican governor, Frank White. And then even getting Mike Huckabee as a governor was almost a series of flukes, right? Just because of the way resignations and special elections happened. And so my high school diploma was actually signed by Mike Huckabee. I was homeschooled. Yeah. And I attribute that to part of why I'm so conservative. Part of it is because I love the idea of the American founding. I love the idea that we are ultimately, as individuals, responsible for our families and for our destinies. And as communities, we get to choose the direction that we get to go in. And I love that idea, that independence, the idea that you are responsible to God, not to somebody else, right?
Right.
My decisions are between me and God, and anybody else can move out of the way.
Yeah.
I love that. And to me, that's the American idea right there. You can go ahead and take risks and make a living, but you're generally going to be responsible for the outcome.
Well, I can honestly say that I have never in my lifetime given it a thought of if I encountered something, I need to turn to the government to help them get this thing taken care of or fixed for me.
That's right.
And yet other people spend their entire life, the government can do this for me.
That's right.
And I just don't understand that mentality.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm conservative, and being homeschooled in particular, I had a distrust of government because every time the legislature met, they were going to make it easier or harder for my parents to do what they thought was best. It was either going to be easier for us to homeschool or it was going to be harder for us to homeschool. So we learned how to be active and to use our voice. And so I grew up knowing that we had to have oversight of our own government, right? That's how the process works. But having worked in government too, at the Ag Department, the Governor's Office, the Securities Department, and the Land Commissioner's Office, I became very well it was really impressed on me that even doing good, the government's not so good at it, right? Even with good things and even things the government's supposed to be good at or supposed to do, just the way that bureaucracy functions, just the way it has to operate in order to be fair, and give everybody a chance, which it should be fair, should treat everybody the same, but that does slow it down. It simply cannot compete with people who can make quick decisions for themselves and bear the responsibility. And the other problem with the government trying to do even good is that the responsibility is always somebody else's, right?
Right.
Cover your rear is probably the guiding principle of 99% of the bureaucracy, and risks are not rewarded, because you're the risk you take. If it doesn't pay off, somebody else higher up is going to bear the responsibility, and in politics, that's not always rewarded.
Right. So. We did a episode with Randy Sams entitled "Dark Money," and there's several Senate seats that are up for grabs here. And dark money's kind of moved in trying to get that and doing different things. Somebody just have to go and listen to that episode. But with this position, it's pretty cut and dry. You either pay the taxes or you lose the land. And so there's really not a whole lot of political pressure on you to do things.
Right.
Right.
The political pressure for me, the way I see it, is you're directly accountable to taxpayers, right? Are you treating people fairly? Because if government exists to protect life, liberty, and property, and the land commissioner's primary job is to threaten to take away property unless the taxes are paid, that's a serious thing, right?
Right.
And so making sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, the process treats everybody fairly, every opportunity to pay those taxes is afforded to the property owner, and that the property is only sold as a last resort. That's really important, I think. But you're right, there aren't really big policy changes. And one of the reasons why dark money tends to pervade legislative races, but not in some of the other constitutional races, is just because for so many businesses, if you change one little tweak in the law, that can affect their bottom line by millions of dollars.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The bigger the company, the bigger the economic footprint, the more it's worth it to invest $1 million in a legislative race, and add that to the folks that might vote to make one little change, and there might not be anything wrong with that change, but it affects your bottom line, right?
Do you get involved in the area of mineral rights and all that, or is that somebody else? Because I know that you got regular land you pay taxes on, then you got mineral rights and all that.
So the answer is yes and no. So how about that for a political answer?
That'll work.
Yes
yeah,
and no. Okay.
That sounds like that sounds political.
He is a politician.
I knew it.
Well, I actually got to sit down with Tommy Land. He's the current land commissioner who's retiring. He's term limited, so he can't run again. But he was kind enough to kind of sit down and let me know kind of how things have changed since I worked there. 14 years ago, 13 years ago. So there has been some time. There have been some policy changes, the process of redeeming properties and so on and so forth. But we did talk about mineral rights, and I did not work on mineral rights when I was there. So the way I understand it is, generally speaking, when you buy a piece of property, the mineral rights are still attached unless you've gone through the process of separating them. Well, if those mineral rights are taxed, if they're separated, and if they're taxed, if they go delinquent, if the taxes aren't paid, the county can certify those mineral rights to the land commissioner. And so over time, mineral rights have accumulated in the commissioner's office. But the land commissioner does not have a process nor the legal authority to sell those mineral rights. So it's kind of like the Hotel California. Mineral rights go in, but they don't come out.
Oh.
And there's my understanding is that inspires a lot of strong feelings, right? Nobody likes taxes, but our favorite taxes are the ones that have no enforcement mechanism, right? If you have to have a tax, the one that they can't make you pay is probably going to be a lot of people's favorite. So,
well, I know mineral rights and minerals now is very, very hot topic and hot item especially with the prices of gold and then silver, and now it's all the stuff that's lithium that's down in South Arkansas and Magnolia area and all that. It's hitting, and so I know that's big. It's
Yes.
huge now.
Yes.
So,
But, for one of the things about the Land Commissioner's Office is that its focus is remarkably narrow. As I started on the campaign trail, people ask about the Buffalo River. Well, I don't really have a whole lot to do with that unless somebody owns a parcel and they don't pay their real estate taxes on it. Or they ask about, the state buying land for a prison. Well, guess what? That doesn't have a whole lot to do with the office unless somebody nearby doesn't pay their taxes and it goes to the Land Commissioner's Office.
Right.
But when it comes to mineral rights, the same thing is largely true, except for what I said, where some of the mineral rights can come to the Land Commissioner's Office, and I, for one, am not unhappy that the lithium is being overseen by the Oil and Gas Commission.
yeah, really.
Because the nice thing about having a narrow focus is that you can put your head down and just do the best job you can. Like when I worked there, customer service, it's so basic. But when you're threatening to take somebody's land and sell it for taxes, nobody walks in there happy to see you.
Right.
They're there because it's under threat of losing their property. Right. And so undertaking that job with the approach of customer service and just making it painless, right? So people would come in, we'd sit them down, and I'd help them fill out their form. You put your name here, your address here. I'd help look up the parcel number because nobody walks around with parcel numbers in their head or legal descriptions. I even became a notary so we could process their payment and then just make it as painless as possible, right? Because we always want to err on the side of the property owner because really, truly, selling the land is the last resort. And most of the time when that happens, it's because the change of ownership was never recorded. So people would come in and say, well, I got this tax bill. Like, well, it's not in your name. Like, well, yeah, the property was my mom's. Like, well, it's not in your mom's name either. Well, it was my grandfather's. It passed to my mom. Like, but they never changed title. And at some point, you got to know where to send the tax bill.
Wow. Okay.
Or a lot of the time, it's because the property taxes are rolled into their mortgage payment, right? Pay their mortgage payment, pay their homeowner's insurance, and their mortgage payment all at once. And then when the property gets paid off, they spent 30 years not worrying about paying the taxes, and now they're responsible for paying the taxes. And then they just, a 30-year habit is kind of hard to break. And so a lot of it is just the research and trying to find the people that might have a lien on the property or the current owners or the children of the owners that are on record. And just, that's a huge part of what happens in that 4-year time period is just finding anybody connected to the property. Will you please pay the taxes so it doesn't go to sale?
Yeah. Well, if the mineral rights do come back to your office, and you say there's no mechanism right now that you can change that and fix it, is that something that you could take on as a project if elected?
So, because I'm a conservative, I tend to approach things with caution, right? It's the law of unintended consequences that we always have to watch out for. And again, because the Land Commissioner's Office largely supports the counties, it's something that I wouldn't mind having a conversation about and to explore and see, is there something that needs to be done? But I simply don't know enough about it to be campaigning on it. It's simply something that I think would probably be a long-term process of trying to build consensus as to how to approach that. Is there a problem that needs to be fixed? Like, what's the reality of the situation? Who is it affecting? Can it be fixed? And can you bring enough people on board to, get some pretty good agreement on which direction to go? I wouldn't mind having those conversations, but I think that would be
These are mineral rights that someone purchased, but couldn't the current landowner have like first right of refusal of I'll pay the back taxes or whatever and buy them back and connect them back to the land?
I think that I should approach that problem with an open mind just because I simply don't know a whole lot about it.
Okay.
One change I do want to see, so the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that we continue the focus on customer service. We want to make sure that we are serving the property owners of Arkansas. And the second thing is because the job is to support our counties, as I've campaigned, I've been asking tax collectors, the county collectors, what can I do to make your life better? And one of the quickest responses I got was to get that money back. So when the taxes faster. So when the taxes are collected, either at auction or by somebody redeeming and paying the property taxes before it goes to auction, the land commissioner is able to hold on to that money for a period of time before sending it to the county. And part of that is just administrative, right? Where instead of making 12 smaller payments, you make one big payment and just, but I think the counties seem to really like the idea of it's their money now that it's been collected. So let's get it into service, serving their taxpayers as quickly as possible. And so that's something I really want to look into.
That makes sense.
Just shorten that holding period.
Well, if 90% of his job, his office, is doing this delinquent property management, the man's out here. The man's out here asking for people to vote for him for a very unpopular job.
That's
if
right.
you're on that.
No, that's exactly right. In fact, my stump speech, I go around saying I'm the most Republican because I started working on Republican campaigns as a 14-year-old. My wife and I had our first date at a Republican fundraising dinner.
Yeah.
We got engaged at the Republican National Convention in 2012. So I am very Republican, but I'm also very conservative. I don't, frankly, trust the government to do much. And so I do have confidence in my ability to do a good job for taxpayers, and that's why I want to serve in this position, because I know the job. I just want to put my head down, and I don't worry about making headlines. I just want to serve the taxpayers and serve the counties. But as I go around saying I'm the most conservative, I'm the most Republican, and I want to be a statewide tax collector, there's a reason why I talk about the importance of those funds going to the counties. Even though I was homeschooled, and I homeschool, my wife and I homeschool our two boys, 80% of the funds collected go to the counties, go into the public school fund, because that's how education in Arkansas is primarily funded. It's through the real estate taxes. And we want our folks educated. I mean, I want to be in charge of, I want me and my wife to be responsible for educating our boys. And we want everybody to be educated, have a good shot, right? Especially because as a conservative, I believe that you are ultimately responsible for your decisions, regardless of the circumstances that you start off with, right? But education really is a great way to have a good shot at making something better.
Sure.
So I see this as a way that really does serve the population of Arkansas, even though nobody likes taxes. And one of the funny things is you see temporary tags on cars that have been purchased and they're expired. I see that, and sometimes I've seen that. The most I've seen is expired by 2 years. On the campaign trail, I think somebody said that they've seen them at 3 years, which is unbelievable to me. But in every Republican committee, every Republican room I've gone to, like, does that bother you? And these low-tax, small government conservatives say yes. I'm like, why? Just because it's a matter of fairness, right? I paid the taxes on my vehicle. I expect you to pay the taxes on your vehicle. I paid the taxes on my real estate. I expect you to pay the taxes on your real estate. And that's just good policy. Republican policy is generally you want a broad tax base that everybody pays into, and then you have lower taxes on everybody. You get into trouble when you have a smaller tax base and some pay a whole lot and others don't pay anything at all. And so I think that really is something we need to keep in mind as we're campaigning for a small government, limited government, transparent government, Republican conservative who's trying to be a tax collector, right?
Well, and Brian Norse, when he recorded with us, before we went on the air, he looked at me and he asked me this question. He said, "Do you trust the government?" And I looked at him with almost disgust and said, "No." He never asked me on the air, but he said, "When was the last time you trusted the government?" I thought for a second and I said, "Well, it'd probably be back around Ronald Reagan's time."
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said the scariest words in the English language are I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
That's
right?
exactly right. Exactly right. I started to bring that up a moment ago. And probably the only thing that I would differ with you on is you keep interlacing conservative and Republican together, and I'm kind of afraid that the Republican Party has gone way too liberal for me anyway, because I'm ultra conservative. Sure. They've gone way too liberal for me. I don't really consider myself a Republican anymore. I'm a Reaganite. I am a conservative. Go ahead. You got something to say about that?
Well, there's a reason why I campaign on being the most Republican and the most conservative.
Okay.
Because we know they're not the same thing. That's the only disagreement I
now
have
we're
with
on
you there.
Now we're on the same page.
No,
there you go.
Absolutely. I am the most Republican. I am the most conservative for different reasons,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, our system I wish it had a better way of filtering between conservative and not conservative. But
Yes.
parties are the way that we function, and so we operate within the parties as best we can. And there has been a lot of turmoil within the Republican Party because sometimes we do have there can be wide disagreement on what conservative means. For me, conservative can mean a whole bunch of different things. It can mean a set of policy positions. It can mean a temperament. It can mean a cautious approach. I am a cautious person. I'm a methodical person. I tend to think if things can go wrong, they will. And so that's one of the reasons why centralizing power is a bad thing. I am a Christian. I believe I have a certain view of human nature, and it's not good, right? Even in a saved by grace state, we're still prone to temptations. We're still prone to all the human foibles. And so giving people power, even good people power, means that they still have to be held accountable. We all do a lot better with accountability. You were mentioning voting and the importance of voting. You know what the problem with voting is? It's a lot like a diet or exercise. It's effective over time if you keep doing it. But when you diet for one day, it doesn't feel like it's made much difference. And then you give up on your diet.
Yeah.
Or at least I do, without some accountability.
Yeah.
Exercise doesn't make much difference on one day, but it's the consistency over time where you actually see the difference. And voting and political participation, it's the same thing. I was at a dinner last night, and the young gentleman he heads the Turning Point chapter up at the U of A.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he asked, what do you think about how to get young people involved? It's like, well, they have to feel like they're making a difference. They have to believe in the ideas. They have to actually feel like their activity will change things. I mean, that's one of the things that got me hooked is as a homeschooler showing up to the Capitol when the legislature was meeting, and most people didn't care about this legislation or that legislation or that legislation. And then you have 50 people here on that one homeschooling bill, and they'd all come from 5 families. But it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And so when you see that you make a difference, that is what inspires actual participation, right? When I start to see my pounds come down, when I see my weight going down, that helps me, all right, all the deprivation I'm feeling is actually worth it, right? And so I think politics is kind of the same way. You have to see the results. And so I think that's a big part of the frustration within the Republican Party is not only do you have some differences of which direction to go, you also have some differences of what's practically possible, right? You can have a disagreement and say, well, this gets us closer to where we want to be, but it won't sell very well to the voters, right? Because voters, ultimately, they're just trying to get through life the best we can, right?
Yeah, right.
And the government shouldn't be making it any harder, and any attempts that the government should do to make it easier also needs to be in a way that doesn't create dependence, right? And so there are a lot of good things that can be done, but what are the consequences tomorrow? What are the consequences 5 years from now? What are the consequences 100 years from now? Right? And so the approach you have to have for politics is it has to be a conversation, right? You have to figure it out as you go along. You need to be able to understand that there's things you don't know. You have to be willing to talk. You have to be willing to listen. And I think that solves not all the problems, but it helps build trust so that when you are going and trying to tackle a thorny issue, say like mineral rights, people know where you're trying to get, and that the process includes people. Because when you're making decisions and you're not including people, that's a really good way to break things.
Right. Well, Christian, I've enjoyed having you on the podcast today. I think we've learned a lot, and I think we've seen your heart and kind of seen where you're wanting to be and what you're wanting to do in office. And I applaud you for everything that you're trying to accomplish here. And I trust me, I'll get out and I'll you've got my vote.
Thank you.
And so
I appreciate that. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, I really do like what I've heard so far, and I've noticed how busy you are because you're all over social media. I think everybody's wanting to have you on their podcast or on some newscast or something. So you've been a pretty popular guy.
I appreciate that, and for me, it's exciting because I started campaigning more than a year ago because we tend to think Arkansas is not a very big state. Well, it sure is when you're trying to be everywhere at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so I've put more than 20,000 miles on my car just trying to be up in Northwest Arkansas, be in South Arkansas, be everywhere in between. I've been to places I've never been before.
Right.
But what's exciting to me is as we've gotten closer to the election, especially after filing, people are actually paying attention. People actually care. And so it's a lot more fun when people are inviting you to come talk to them instead of banging on the door trying to get through to people. But people have been wonderful. I've met so many of the neatest people, and it's been a family thing where I've been able to bring my wife with me a lot of the time and the boys with me, and it's just been a lot of fun.
That's great.
But we're almost to the end, so that's exciting too.
Well, folks, be sure and get out and vote in the Republican primary. What day is that? I forgot. Is
March 3rd.
March 3rd. That's what. Okay, March 3rd.
Early voting starts February 17th.
Yep. Okie-doke. So get out and vote for guys like Christian, because he is a nice, young, conservative, Christian, moral values, you name it. I can toss everything out there. Get out there and vote for him. And Christian, we'd like to say thank you for being on the show. And here is one of our Larry's Ranch Raves and Reviews T-shirt. Okay, we'd like to give that to you as a gift. Wear that proudly. Tell everybody about us. And folks, be sure and subscribe. I know that I've looked at analytics, particularly on YouTube, and there's a lot of you that are watching the show that are not actually subscribed. So be sure and subscribe. Our videos on YouTube and Rumble. We have it on Spotify. Podcast analytics are showing that we're growing pretty nicely. So continue to do that. Tell your friends, tell your family about our episodes, and be sure and subscribe to us and tell everybody you can about us. Hey, we'll see you next episode. Have a great day.